And I have my reminder to tell me. Hi, Lindsay. Just checking to see you're chatting. Can you hear us? And will you be able to talk? Okay, so it looks like Lindsay doesn't have a microphone or camera.
Oh, bummer.
So that's okay. If you, Lindsay, if you keep up your conversation in the chat, I will just keep repeating it for folks. So that's, I've done those kind of sessions before. That's okay. We'll make this work. We're glad you're here. I'm really curious, where is Albright College? No way that was. Oh, in Pennsylvania. Okay. Okay. So we have one more person registered, and I'm going to give it just a few more minutes, and then we'll go ahead and get started. Just give her a few minutes to get connected. I know when I tried to get on yesterday, it took me a little bit longer than I planned, so we'll give her a second. Home of the Reading Railroad from Monopoly. Everybody's favorite place. Reading. I knew I was going to say it wrong. But it should be reading. Okay, so it looks like our connection's on. Okay, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. Welcome to both of you. I'm Stephanie Race, and I am the head of research and faculty outreach at the University of North Florida in Jacksonville. And pleased that you're both online with us. And it looks like we've got Colette, who has microphone and audio, and then Lindsay's going to chat, and so I'll repeat what Lindsay's typing just so we can get all of that recorded as we go along. We are recording today's session, and it'll be available on the group's YouTube channel afterwards if you want to watch it. And we are making some notes. We've had, this is the second program. The first one was canceled, but not enough attendees. But we're making notes as we go along, and so we'll share some of that information out as well. So today's discussion on outreach programming is on outreach programming for Banned Book Week. And as you know, it's a national annual event that draws attention to the harms of censorship and celebrates our freedom to read. And so today we're just going to talk about all kinds of programming options, what you all are doing, and those kind of things, the logistics. And so can we start with introductions? I've told you who I am, but Colette, would you go ahead and introduce yourself?
Sure. I am an assistant librarian at the University of San Francisco in San Francisco. And so I do a number of outreach activities, and I also am a reference and instruction librarian.
Okay. And Lindsay, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself in chat. And Lindsay's instructional services and outreach librarian at Albright, which we know is in Reading, Pennsylvania. And so we just have, as you know, you both received a list of questions, and so we'll just start with, you want to talk about the types of programming you're doing in your library for Banned Book Week, what you're doing in the library, what you're doing outside of the library, are you partnering with them campus? So Colette, do you want to talk about what you're doing? And then Lindsay, if you want to chat as well.
Sure. So actually, I'm not sure what I'm doing this year, but I can tell you what I've done in the past. Okay. And it's mostly been within the library. And so last year we culled a bunch of books that have been historically banned and kind of made an interactive display wherein people read the description of why it was banned and then tried to guess what book it was. It was really colorful, and we got a lot of good compliments on it. So it was very positive.
Interesting. So I'm imagining that took a little bit of effort.
It did. Not too much. I worked on it with my coworker, and so we actually, no, there were 3 people, an intern, my coworker, and myself. So divided between the 3 of us, it wasn't too time consuming. I was really pleased with how visually it looked. We actually printed out a bunch of different posters that I believe ALA had, you know how ALA does the Band Book Week poster each year. So we printed out like the last 5 years of them and made kind of like a grid with all of the different ones, and it looked really cool. So I think people were drawn to it. So I was pleased with that. Yep.
Very cool. And Lindsay says they'll be having their 3rd annual band book readout where students and faculty read excerpts from their favorite band books on the library front steps. Lindsay, can you, do people reserve time? Do they just show up and read? How do you handle that part of it? A little bit of both. Okay. And it looks like Charles C. has joined us, and it again looks like no audio. So if you want to go ahead and chat with us, we'd love to have that and to see what you're doing. And Lindsay followed up with, we encourage people to register, but you take walk-ins. Here at UNF, I am actually not part of the planning for Band Book Week. The librarian who's in charge of it is going to be on tomorrow's discussion. And we haven't even, it's so funny today, I realized I hadn't even talked to her about it. We are doing a readout for the first time, and so I'm excited about that, and I know we've got some students who are very interested in participating. I was working in a public library last year, and we wanted to do a readout, but it was a very small conservative community, and once we started talking about banned books, people thought we were banning the books.
Oh.
That became an issue, and so we ended up not doing it. So I'm excited about doing the readout this year. So I'm looking to see, Charles, see if you've got audio. Charles, if your audio is not working and you've got a mic connected, there's a cog at the top center of the screen. If you click on that, you might want to adjust your audio settings, and that may get you audio. Okay, there you are. But if you want to go ahead and share with us in chat, if you can't talk, what you're doing at your library for Banned Books Week. One of the ideas that came up in yesterday's discussion that I participated in that I thought was really cool was doing the brackets for the banned books. And so we actually spent a bit of time talking about it. And they did paper brackets. They did a physical bracket in the library and had books go head to head and work their way down. And I thought that sounded really interesting. And we found SUNY Oneonta had up a, and I'll share it, they had put up a bracketology, so instructions for how they had done that. And I thought that added some dimension. One of the things we talked about was doing displays and adding some dimension, and I thought that was just kind of interesting. And they talked about how they actually voted online and how they made that work, because we were all kind of interested in that.
Yeah, that sounds really interesting, actually.
Yeah, the SUNY link actually has it had pictures of how they did what their physical display looked like, and then they described what they did when they took it online, which I thought was really useful, because I couldn't in my head figure out how you would go on, how you'd take it online. So that was interesting. So Charles Lee says they don't have anything planned, have challenges at a small, medium-sized university in getting students involved, suggestions in marketing the library events. So Lindsay or Colette, do either one of you want to talk about how you've marketed what you've done?
Most of our marketing, sorry, Lindsay, I just jumped right in. I think over social media. So we make sure that it goes out on our blog and our Facebook account and Twitter and Instagram. But I think we face issues of getting people to attend as well. So I'd be interested to hear what Lindsay has to say.
And Colette, is your display, can they check out the books? Are they just looking at them while they're there?
Yeah, they could check out the books. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So the social media seems to be the way most of us are doing our marketing and getting people out. And Lindsay says they use a lot of social media and have a good relationship with the theater art department, so they make sure to publish when the banned book stuff is coming up. That's an interesting relationship. in my head, I think English departments.
Mhm.
So the theater, can you tell us a little bit about the theater department, art department's interest? Because I thought English, and we actually had, I did a orientation session for a young adult lit class, and most of their authors were authors of books that had been banned, and so we talked a bit about um, our readout that was coming up, and the students were all very interested in participating. So we're going to direct some communication to those classes for sure, but they're part of the English department. So I'm curious about the theater department. And she says they have a booklet that they do once a month with all the theater art stuff going on. The month of September they include the banned book readout information. Also have a student email that goes out once a week with campus-wide events. We also have a weekly campus student email, and my guess is that we'll use that, and it also goes to faculty. So we have one that goes to faculty and staff. Just they have a good relationship with the English department, even have one professor who teaches banned books, so she always makes her students participate. That's great, that ability. So Charlie, you said you're having issues with marketing. What have you tried so far? Now, one of the things we do here is there is a weekly market day. It's kind of the flea market for students, and we typically have a table once a month, and they try to schedule it around a big event that's coming up. So I think we're doing a table the week of Banned Books Week. I think we're scheduled to go out. Online newsletter and you find faculty don't know about it. That I think is the hard part is communicating with faculty. I'm responsible for faculty outreach, and I'm very new to my position, and so
Mhm.
communicating with faculty, we've been trying to get our liaison, so the departmental contacts to make those contacts. Yes, everybody wants an email directly to themselves. They want their own private email, which is hard. It's very, very hard. So um, we talked a little bit. Colette talked about the display she's doing. Are Chelsea or Lindsay, are either of you doing displays? I know if you're part of the library marketing and outreach Facebook group, there was a really neat display that someone just did, um, sort of a book burning display that I thought was pretty good. Lindsay says we have a bookcase display we do, and then we have a bulletin board display that goes in the lobby. Um, Charles says, oh, your one woman outreach department.
Mhm.
I can relate to that. And you're not going to do a display this month. So you're just kind of getting ideas for what's going on, what you could do. I know, and again, we're doing a display here, but it will be in a glass case. So I'm kind of interested in some interactive. One of the things we talked about when we were doing our initial brainstorming was just using our whiteboards and putting up some kind of question about banned books on the whiteboard and seeing what kind of responses we get from students. We've been pretty successful with getting student feedback that way.
That's been our experience too. We use the whiteboard for a lot of different things. I haven't done it in the banned books context, but they love interacting with that.
They do, and it's interesting. I had someone who was like, "Well, they're going to write things we don't want them to write," and I said, "You have an eraser," and
Mm-mm.
we shouldn't. We want to see what they say. It was we. I think they're pretty honest when they put feedback up, so I've kind of enjoyed
Mhm.
it.
Mhm.
So, do any of you partner with other campus units or community groups? Um, any of you working with another agency? Lindsay talked a bit about they've got a relationship with theater department.
We have not for band book weeks yet,
Okay.
although I would love to do that.
Who would you consider, or who are you thinking about possible partners?
Um, yeah, certainly the English department. We have a critical diversity studies department here that I'm thinking be
Oh,
um,
interesting.
might be interested in it. Yep, those were the two that are off the top of my head. Also, I'm looking into forming better partnerships with the resident directors in the dorms. So um, in the future, I'd probably want to get them involved as well.
And I know that's something we've been working on. The dorm. We have a librarian who goes over one night a week and hangs out at the dorm.
Mm.
Um,
How is that working? I know that's kind of off topic, but
we can go wherever we want to go.
okay.
It's interesting. We just started doing it in the spring. We put it on hold in the fall because there's practically nobody on campus here in the fall. I mean, in the
Mhm.
summer. She
Mhm.
started up again this fall, and she hasn't had any questions. You know, there's people wandering around, but nobody asks. She's also doing a table. Our athletes just moved into the building for their
Mhm.
evening study hall, and she's been hanging out with them. And this week she tried putting up a sign that said the librarian is in, and
Mhm.
she finally got questions.
Oh, great.
So they knew who she was, but they wouldn't ask a question. She moved her table to someplace a little more private and put the
Mhm.
sign up, and immediately got people asking questions. So I think
Oh,
she's going to
awesome.
try that at the dorms and see if that
Mhm.
helps.
Cool.
If she, it's sort of like figuring out what the right word is to tell them you'll help.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, Charles, Lindsay, either of you have other groups that you're partnering with or thinking about partnering? Anybody partnering with their local public library? Good to see. Okay, I don't see anything. And Lindsay says
Okay.
they've worked with the resident directors, but at the moment they're just working with English and theater and art. I have to remember the theater art. I actually made a note of that to tell our folks because that was an idea I don't think we've talked about that. Um, and we have a good relationship with our art program and the fine arts program, so that seems like one we haven't thought about. And how do your students, faculty, staff respond to your programming and to the just banned books a week and then the programming you're doing? What kind of response are you getting?
As I said earlier, we got a, a few comments last year. Like I had never from students, and this is just people coming up to the desk and talking to us, saying I'd never really considered this issue before, or you know, this is a reminder not to take the right to read for granted. Um,
Wow.
I know there was one person also that took a picture of of the display and commented upon it, like this is great. So not too many, but these are students, and I think it did make them think about some things.
Chelsea says, we partnered with our public library for a big read project in the past, and it was great. It was in the evening and not during regular office hours. She likes the drama theater idea. Low turnout is a major issue. Yes, that's the turnout's always one of our issues is what and one of the things I've started talking to we've started talking about is what is good turnout? You know, if we get 10 students, is that good? Is that not good? What are we shooting for? Lindsay says usually pretty well. It does ebb and flow for our events pretty much the same every year, which is good because students know it's coming. Find students love to read things that people tell them they shouldn't. That's true. What I found interesting was students don't realize um, that the things they've read and really enjoyed have been challenged or are on a banned
Right.
books week. That's always a real surprise to them. Um, that's always interesting.
I
And
have
I
a
went,
question. Oh,
sure.
I'm sorry. I have a question about the readouts. Some of the logistics about that. Like, do the students choose the passages, or do you have passages prepared?
Okay, Lindsay says someone last year read the raciest excerpt from 50 Shades of Grey at the readout. Um, so, Lindsay, can you talk about how passages are selected and how that part's done?
And also, maybe while she's typing, I just uh, I feel like this year there's a particular issue going on that's uh, related to this. I know that woman in, I think it's Tennessee, that's having a problem with the Rebecca Skloot book
Mm-hmm.
about Henrietta Lacks. I'm trying to think about how I can make people aware of that.
Oh, that would be interesting because it's such a current issue.
Right, exactly. It's very current.
We've had a number of issues. We actually had one here in Jacksonville at one of the local schools. There was a challenge,
Mm.
um, and we were discussing whether or not we should bring that into the conversation. Um, one of the one of the programs that's planned that I don't have any details for is a presentation by faculty. So I'll be curious to see what they're going to talk about.
Mm-hmm.
And Lindsay says selections left up to the student faculty member. We try not to do excerpts from the same book, and we always supply banned books on a cart that people can just take and read from. Okay.
Thank you.
I know when I was looking to do the one at the public library last year, um, we had set up, and I can't remember what it was. It was free software that lets you do volunteer signups,
Mm.
and I can't think of what it was called. And we just created a form, and the idea was to let people sign up, pick what time they wanted to read, their 5-minute block to read, and then we just asked them to tell us what book they were going to read from, and figured we'd go. And then our plan was to provide copies of books so that people could just choose one and read from it. And Lindsay, how long is your readout? How long does it last? I guess I actually have a lot of logistical questions for Lindsay I hadn't really thought about. And then do you do it outside or inside the library? I wanted to do ours on the steps of the courthouse because it was this beautiful old courthouse and that just created all kinds of chaos. Usually from 12:45 to about 3, weather permitting outside and front, and you serve. Oh, serving food. That always helps. That when I got here, one of the first things everybody told me was, if you serve food, people will come. So the next question is one that I think everybody is dealing with, but how do you assess or evaluate your Banned Book Week efforts? And then how do you share out information about that to your stakeholders? Are any of you doing any kind of assessment?
Unfortunately, not. I know we should be doing a little bit more of that. Yeah, I'm not at this point.
Okay, and that was actually, we talked about this at the conversation yesterday, um, that we're all figuring out how to make that useful. Mostly it's counting how many people come, but how to evaluate the impact. I think actually, Colette, getting those comments from students, that the feedback that had made them think about it, that's some interesting impact in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
where they thought about things they hadn't. That could be interesting. Charles said, she's in Alabama, where religion and race are a touchy topic, and she's non-traditional New Jersey Southern. And I've learned what topics I should include and what not to challenge. Love to challenge, learning which battles to fight. That was exactly what happened to me when I was at a small rural public library. Yeah, you have to figure out what'll work and what won't work. I'm sorry, I thought I turned my phone off, but apparently I didn't. And we talked about marketing and advertising. Are any of you using the materials that are provided by ALA for your material your things? So Lindsay, you do. Which things are you using? And I guess I should actually. I'm skipping questions. No. She uses the posters and bookmarks in the updated banned book list. And Charlie says you create your own for various displays.
We've done both, created our own and used the provided graphics and posters.
Okay. And then that sounds like some of us are new to this, but what kind of lessons have you learned from your programming? This is one of the, I always find this to be so helpful. Lindsay, always have food. And what I've learned is always have food and tell them you'll have food. We're having a celebration next week for something, and I was talking to two students. We were taking their picture so we could use it, and I said, "Oh, you should come," and they were like, "Oh yeah, whatever." And I said, "There'll be food," and then they were both so excited about coming. Come and have your cookie. So other things you've learned? Any hints about time for preparation? Like how long does it take when you do your displays and you're pulling information about why things were challenged? How long does it take you to prepare for those kind of things? It feels like the kind of thing you can't do at the spur of the moment.
Well, I think for me, certainly the displays can be done. What we've done with our interactive displays, I can do those, a week before, and it'll take, a couple of hours, 2 or 3 hours to pull the books and, make it look nice and whatever. I think to do like a readout or whatever, I would need to start a lot earlier in order to get more participation, because right now ours is just like a passive program. Mm-hmm. So anyway, that's my next goal, is to start this a little earlier so I can do some different things besides the passive programming.
Okay. And Lindsay says displays don't usually take too long because we are a small library. The long part is the logistics of planning for the readout with the speakers. So Lindsay, when do you start preparing for that? Now?
Thanks for asking that question. I was thinking of it too, so I'm glad that you asked it.
So like 2 weeks out is enough time? Isn't it 2 weeks out?
Yeah.
Yeah. And Charles, I agree. No more budget for food. A lunchtime lecture without food, low turnout. Purchase your own, but it gets costly. Yes, that doing it on your own gets costly. Okay, Lindsay says she can start now because this is the third or fourth year in a row, and this faculty and students know to expect it. Okay, so would you, this may be a question you can't answer, but do you remember when you first started how long you needed to prep? Okay. So a bunch of newbies. All the people doing outreach here are relatively new to our library as well. So I think we have short list, but what have been your most successful activities and events for Band Book Week? So Lindsay says the readout by far.
I'm trying to think of our past displays. The one last year was great. There was also a year when a few people worked on having a projection of different quotes onto the wall that changed. And
Oh,
they did a really nice display. And so it was, constantly moving and changing. I think they actually like animated tissue paper somehow to be like fire.
wow.
So that one was really good too. It was really dynamic.
Oh, that's interesting. I saw one. This is not, I cannot take any credit for this, but I just found it so interesting. Um, UNLV last year did a banned books buffet, and I'm going to push out the
Mm.
link to it. They had a, I saw the images, and just from what I looked at, they had a room full of different kind of materials, and it was, it looked like it was very well attended, and also looked like it required a lot of prep work. Um, I have a friend out there, and so I'm going to contact him to see sort of what went into doing that, because it looked kind of interesting. They had a room. Their room was interesting. They looked like the walls were all whiteboards, and then they had posters on the walls, and people were writing comment. The posters were for the individual books, and people were writing comments around it. So that was
Mm.
just, it looked kind of interesting to me. And then, have you done any virtual activities? Anybody done any kind of? Lindsay says not yet.
Not yet here either.
Okay. And I don't know. I have seen a couple things. There was a, it was a public library, I think, but I think it would work anywhere. Um, they're celebrating with an Instagram challenge. They're asking people to take photos with their favorite banned or challenged book, or a picture of themselves reading um, and wearing one of the library's banned book buttons, and then share them on Instagram. And they had specific hashtags, and then they were going to pick some of their favorites, and they had prizes for them. And then in the SUNY Oneana's bracketology, they actually talked about how they did the bracket, how they did online voting for the bracket using social media. And so I thought that was kind of interesting. So we've reached the end of the questions. Do you all have other things, other comments, other thoughts, other questions you'd like to ask um, that we didn't talk about? Something you came here just dying to know how somebody did something in particular?
I don't have any more questions, but I got some great ideas from the session. So
Oh, good.
thank you very much.
Thank you. Glad to hear that. Okay, Lindsay says, thinking about doing mug shots for this with the students. Has anyone ever tried that? No. What do you, can you tell us a little more about what you're thinking and how that would tie in? I know our students like having their pictures taken. I I think it's, when I ask, it never seems hard to get students to do that. Oh, yes, Lindsay, I have seen that. She says, saw it at a library. The students would have their picture taken with their favorite banned book, like it was a mugshot, and then the photos could be posted on social media. I have seen something where people have done that. Um, haven't ever tried it, but I've seen it. And I saw one where the library had, they had the conversation balloon. They had and it was I think it was laminated so students could write a comment on it, and it was sort of this their thought about the book they were holding. So it's the similar concept. I like that idea. I think students would enjoy that. That would be something actually for us if we do something outside. We could do that outside at our market day event. So you'd hit up the students who weren't in the building, which is something we're working hard at. Is the ones who come in the building know about us. So how do we get the ones who are outside the building? Yes, Chelsea, the ones I've seen were like the arrest photos, the one you see on the police where they're holding up. I don't have a piece of paper in front of me. They're holding up a little piece of paper and it has the book and then a comment about it for their favorite banned book. Well, I want to thank you both all for joining us. I appreciate that everybody was online, and Lindsay and Charlie, that you guys were willing to stick it out with the chatting. Um, I know it's a little bit harder if you don't have a microphone, but I appreciate that you were willing to do that. Um, Glad that you got ideas from today's session. I have a whole bunch of notes myself, so that was great. Hope you'll come back and join us in October. We're going to be discussing outreach programming during final exam period. So we'll be ahead of the game, give you some similar kind of things where we'll have questions and a discussion. And it is scheduled the week of October 12th through the 15th, so be on the lookout. Wherever you saw the announcement for this, you should probably see it. So I know that it was on the ULS list. I think it was showed up on the library, the LMAO Facebook page and some other places. So keep a lookout. But it is the week of October 12th through the 15th. And then this afternoon or tomorrow morning, I will send you an email with a survey. We hope you'll fill it out and tell us what you thought of today's session and how we can improve it for you and for other participants. But again, thank you for joining us, and we hope to see you back next month.
Thanks very much.
Oh, thank you. Bye. Bye, Charles. Bye, Lindsay.